Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. After getting engaged to Steven for 3 months, he went through 4 girlfriends in a row. On the day we broke up, I was drunk and randomly picked the most handsome guy from a group of male models. You're with me tonight. The next morning, I was shocked to see a dragon tattoo on the man's left wrist. Later, I unexpectedly vomited and found out I was pregnant, but my family pressured me to have an abortion. That night, the hospital was surrounded by numerous black-clad bodyguards. A stern man barged into the room, picked me up from the operating table, and carried me away. A month after giving birth, as my daughter and I were being taken to the wedding venue, I received a call from Steven. "Shirley, what are you doing? I miss you. Can I come to see you?" His voice was full of melancholy. Glancing at the jealous man nearby, I smiled and replied, "Just had a baby, preparing for the wedding. If you come, remember to bring a red envelope and a gift, thanks." As soon as I entered the banquet hall, I received a screenshot from my best friend on Instagram. It was a post by my fiancé Steven just 10 minutes ago. "This budding flower is going to bloom for me tonight." The photo showed a beautiful girl shyly leaning on him. I put away my phone and immediately saw Steven. He was with the girl, black hair, snow-white skin, a delicate figure, and innocent almond-shaped eyes, exactly like the girl in the photo on his phone. Steven was playfully teasing, holding a dazzling diamond ring to put on her finger. "Steven, are you serious this time?" someone joked. Steven lazily smiled, touched the girl's soft face and said, "Yes, I'm serious. No more games." As he finished speaking, everyone at the table noticed me. Steven just gave me a casual glance and then looked away. His new girlfriend seemed curious. "Steven, who is she? She's so pretty." Steven chuckled sarcastically. "She's my future wife." The girl's expression changed immediately, pushing Steven away in anger. Steven then embraced the girl, making her blush and look adorable. Everyone at the table looked at me with pity. This was the 3rd month of my engagement with Steven. This girl was his 4th girlfriend since we broke up. Strangely, this time I felt no desire to be angry. "I need to leave." "You guys have fun," I said, retracting my gaze and preparing to leave. Steven casually looked up and said, "Shirley, if you walk out today, our engagement is over." His words actually made me laugh. I stopped, turned to look at him and said, "Steven, let's call off the engagement." "Shirley, what are you saying?" Steven's eyes darkened as he pushed his girlfriend off his lap. "Steven!" The girl almost stumbled, looking displeased. "Get out!" Steven said coldly without looking back. The girl was scared, tears streaming down her face as she covered her face and ran out in tears. The room fell silent and all eyes were on me. I looked at Steven calmly, as if discussing what to eat for the day. "Steven, I've made up my mind. Let's cancel our engagement," I said as I walked away. As I left, I faintly heard the sound of something breaking, but I didn't turn back. Stepping out of the banquet hall into the intoxicating spring night, I felt an unprecedented sense of freedom and relief. I had applied to a university in New York because of the engagement. For over 3 years, it seemed like my world revolved around Steven forever. My parents and family thought I was incredibly lucky to marry him, but only I knew the bitterness in it. My best friend called, both angry and worried. "Shirley, what is Steven up to? Does he even remember he has a fiancé? He just announced a cruise party for tomorrow night with fireworks all night, celebrating his new girlfriend's birthday." Interrupting her, I suggested, "Bella, how about going for a drink? Surely your favorite nightclub. Do you want to party all night tonight?" For over 3 years at university, I had always been an obedient girl. My parents constantly reminded me not to tarnish our family's reputation by making any mistakes. "Don't mess up. Steven won't like it. Modesty is your best dowry." But Steven would privately tell others, "Shirley is such a prude. Kissing her feels like nothing at all." So you see, those words are quite ridiculous. With a hiccup, Bella pointed to a row of male models in front. "Shirley, take your pick. Drinks are on me tonight." I carefully examined the men, and although they were all quite handsome, none were able to capture my interest. Slightly bored, I waved my hand. "None of them. Let's switch." Bella complained, "Shirley, what kind of Prince Charming are you looking for? I promise you the most handsome men in New York are all here." It's him. I suddenly interrupted, pointing to a man who had just come down the stairs. Bella followed my gaze and exclaimed, "Oh my God, Shirley, he's truly a Prince Charming." Sitting up straight, I stared at the man. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, long legs. His body was impeccable and most importantly, his face was extremely attractive, exuding pride and unruliness in every feature, perfectly aligned with my aesthetics. "I choose you. You're with me tonight." I pointed at him, standing up unsteadily and walking towards him. "What's your name?" The man raised an eyebrow and with interest said, "Richard." In that moment, I didn't notice the few people behind Richard quietly moving away. "Will you come with me?" Richard's lips curled into a playful smile. "Miss Shirley, I'm at your service." I reached out my hand to him, and Richard looked at the engagement ring on my left ring finger. Engaged. I suddenly remembered the ring and felt nauseous, quickly taking it off and throwing it into the trash. "I'm single now," Richard smiled gently, taking my hand. "Miss Shirley, where shall we go tonight?" As we aimlessly walked outside, my mind filled with the words my parents had sent earlier. "Shirley, who gave you permission to mention breaking off the engagement? How can you be so clueless? Go apologize to Stephen quickly, do you hear me? The housekeeper said you haven't returned to your apartment yet. A young lady staying out at night tarnishes their name. If you dare do something shameful and embarrass us, your father and I won't spare you." I couldn't help but laugh looking at Richard beside me. "To a hotel? Care to join me, Richard?" When Richard emerged from the shower, I quickly saw the messages my best friend had sent. My cheeks burned with embarrassment as I quickly turned off my phone, trying to hide my embarrassment. Leaning against the door, Richard's lips curled into a teasing smile. "Miss Shirley, what do you feel like doing tonight?" I held my phone nervously, trying to appear composed. "It's your job to ask me what I want." Approaching me, Richard leaned down with his hands on the armrest of the single sofa I was sitting on. My nose almost brushed against his chest. I tried to move back, but Richard lifted me up. "Shall we have a good time tonight, Miss Shirley? I promise to do my job well and make you satisfied." But things didn't seem to go smoothly. As the sun was about to rise, I cried and bit Richard's arm. "I'll report you and leave you a bad review. It hurts." Richard, sweating profusely, smiled helplessly and then kissed me. With a hoarse voice he apologized. "I'm sorry I didn't do it well." I glared at him, my eyes red and swollen, feeling utterly unjust. Richard kissed my teary eyes, and I could see a hint of tenderness in his gaze. Perhaps because it was the first time I had indulged myself in such a way, I didn't sleep soundly. I woke up earlier than Richard. Even the curtains were not completely drawn, allowing bright morning light to filter through. Richard's arm was wrapped tightly around me, his breathing steady and deep. I looked at his face for a while, then gently removed his arm. It was then that I saw the dragon tattoo on his left wrist. I could hardly believe it. I was dumbfounded. Due to Stephen, I had heard some stories about the families in New York. Such a dragon tattoo would only appear on the wrist of the heir of the Smith family. The Smiths had a very frightening underworld background in both places. Not only did I mistake the Smiths' heir for a male model, but I also slept with him. Thinking about what I had seen in the media before, how grim and terrible the fate of women targeted by the underworld could be, I couldn't think about anything else. I didn't even take a shower. I hastily put on some clothes and ran out of the room. I booked a ticket home directly. When Richard woke up, he subconsciously reached out to his side but only felt emptiness. All sleepiness vanished in an instant. Sitting up, he looked at the pearl earring left on the bed, and a faint smile played on his lips. Shirley really surprised him. A timid, shy, conservative and obedient girl, startled like a little rabbit even with just a tease, but she went to a nightclub to find a male model, and even brought him back to the hotel. Yet despite her bold behavior, she was still a first-timer. Richard remembered last night how she cried and screamed, pretended to be in pain and scratched him. Yet he patiently comforted her until late into the night. In the end, she quieted down, red-eyed like a little rabbit in his arms. Seeing her so delicate and pitiful, he wished she could bear him a litter of adorable bunnies right away. Clutching the earring, Richard looked at the conspicuously red stain on the bedsheet. But now everything was fine. He was back to his old self, slick and adept. The esteemed prince of the Smiths, Loved both in the underworld and high society. Being slept with and then dumped, if that got out, where would he hide his face? Yet thinking of Shirley's fragile and pitiful appearance when she cried, he softened. Richard picked up his phone and made a call. Find out where Shirley is now. Once you locate her, inform me. I will personally bring her back. With a cold expression, Richard hung up the phone, got out of bed, and ripped off the blood-stained sheet. Approaching graduation, most of my classmates were working off campus. I also took leave from school. Upon returning to Los Angeles, instead of going home, I went to the hotel. However, on the second night of staying at the hotel, when I went downstairs to pick up a takeaway, I noticed two unfamiliar men in black tactical gear in the lobby. Struck me as odd. Sometimes a woman's intuition is incredibly accurate. I thought of the heir of the Smiths. I thought of the night I mistook Richard for a male model and brought him back to the hotel. I thought of the terrifying dragon tattoo on his wrist. A chill ran down my spine. Richard had such formidable means. Even if I returned to Los Angeles, he could easily track me down. I was so anxious and scared that I didn't even bother to eat. I changed hotels in the dead of night. When the taxi arrived downstairs as I left the hotel lobby, I vaguely felt that the two men seemed to be following me. My heart was filled with fear and panic, but as the car drove off and I saw no one following, my heart slowly calmed down. Maybe I was overthinking it. The heir of the Smiths, a man with power, probably wouldn't bother with insignificant individuals like me. At that time, Richard received a call from Los Angeles. Young master, we've located Miss Shirley. However, she seems to have noticed us and appeared very frightened and agitated. She changed hotels suddenly and almost fell when she got into a car. We are concerned that continued surveillance might increase her distress, so we haven't taken further action. Clutching his phone, Richard stood atop a skyscraper. The entire city lay beneath his feet. Everything was in his grasp. But at that moment, he felt an emptiness in his heart that he couldn't fill. It seemed that Shirley had been like that since they first met. 3 years had passed with no progress, still as timid and fearful as before. Otherwise, how could Stephen have bullied her to such an extent? But Richard had always believed that Shirley, the obedient girl, loved Stephen. So he rarely visited New York and seldom inquired about her. However, his thoughts changed after that night. If Shirley truly loved Stephen, then she wouldn't have taken such bold actions. She certainly wouldn't have initiated the breakup and called off the engagement. After the subordinate's voice interrupted him, asking, "Young master, what should we do next?" Richard looked out at the dazzling city lights below, lit a cigarette and said in a deep voice, "Continue to stay in Los Angeles. Keep an eye on her situation. Be cautious and don't scare her further. If anything happens, inform me immediately. Do not delay." Ending the call, Richard walked back to his desk. Opening the drawer, he saw the pearl earring, and memories of that night flooded back. Thinking about Shirley tearfully accusing him of having poor business skills and threatening to complain about him, Richard couldn't help but chuckle. Yet, remembering Shirley's pitiful and innocent look, his heart softened. After encountering those two men with suspicious behavior, the following days were uneventful. I stayed in the new hotel for a week with no disturbances. Relieved, I suddenly remembered that with all the rushing to escape, I had completely forgotten about contraception. My mind went blank. I lay on the bed for half an hour before finally calling my best friend. "Shirley, are you okay? I heard that Stephen and his girlfriend have broken up. He called me yesterday asking why you haven't been to school. I think he wants to find you." Before I could even say a word after the call connected, Bella rattled on a bunch of information. After she finished, I sighed softly. "Bella, I don't have the energy to worry about Stephen right now. I just want to know if no contraception was used, could I be pregnant?" After I parked my car, Stephen couldn't wait to come out to greet me. My mom smiled broadly. "Shirley, look at you being so unreasonable and throwing a tantrum at Stephen. He's being so tolerant and speaking up for you. Auntie, don't blame Shirley. It was me who caused her to be upset earlier. It's understandable that she's angry." My dad immediately chimed in. "Young people love to have fun. Men often play games in relationships. Surely it's because you lack maturity and aren't considerate enough. Ultimately, it's all my fault." Stephen looked at me, his eyes filled with tenderness. Shirley, I apologize for my mistake. Can you forgive me and not be angry? Honestly, I was surprised. After all, Stephen had been involved with other women before, but he had never voluntarily admitted his mistakes and apologized like this before. Moreover, I didn't have much affection for him in the first place. Any bit of feelings I had for him had long been exhausted by his heartlessness and unfaithfulness. His current show of deep affection only repulsed me, making me feel indifferent and even disgusted. Surely Stephen saw me standing still, expressionless. He furrowed his brows and took a step. He stepped forward and reached out his hand towards me. I saw the engagement ring on his left ring finger. Thinking about the ring that should have been on my finger but had long been thrown into the trash can buy me. Just like Stephen, he belonged in the trash as well. I didn't reach out my hand. Instead, I took a step back. The smile on Stephen's face couldn't hold up anymore. My parents also changed their expressions. Surely that's enough. If you continue like this, it will show your lack of manners. Yes, it was my fault, I lacked manners. I just didn't want to marry a man who was fickle. Is that wrong? I said it before. It's normal for young people to play around. Moreover, Stephen has already apologized to you. Now I felt chills running through me. These were my biological parents. In their eyes, I wasn't a beloved daughter but merely a commodity that could be sold at a satisfactory price after weighing pros and cons. Whether the commodity was happy or sad didn't matter at all to them. I couldn't bear it anymore. I didn't want to become a resentful wife. I took another step back. The engagement is off. Stephen and I had agreed on this in New York last time. I looked at Stephen. If I remember correctly, you also said that as long as I walked out, our engagement would be dissolved. Stephen's expression gradually turned cold. Surely, let's talk things out. There's nothing to talk about, Stephen. With your background, Shirley can't measure up to you. Shirley, my mom angrily grabbed my arm. You're being so stubborn. What do you mean she can't measure up? You and Stephen are engaged. It's normal to have arguments, but how can you just call off the engagement like this? Stephen, don't be angry. Shirley is being unreasonable now. I'll tell her grandpa later and have him teach her a lesson. Upon hearing this, Stephen sneered. No need, Auntie. Since Shirley has decided, let's call off the wedding. After Stephen left, the atmosphere in the house was heavy. Grandpa sat at the head, not saying a word, just occasionally coughing violently. After about half an hour, Grandpa finally spoke. Since such a good marriage opportunity was neglected by you, don't blame me for being heartless in the future. Surely you are our daughter. You've enjoyed the glory and wealth we provided you, so naturally, you should make sacrifices for the family. You know we're just barely holding on now. We hoped that if you married Stephen, we could gradually reverse our fortunes, but now it seems we were just wishful. Grandpa stood up with his cane. Enough talk. Let's start arranging blind dates for you. Surely, you've been well taken care of in this family. In these past 20 years, a sum of 20 million wouldn't be excessive. 20 million? Our assets 10 years ago didn't even reach 20 million, you know? If you can't come up with the money, then just obediently marry someone. Someone will be willing to pay 20 or 30 million to marry you. We've raised you for 20 years, not to raise an ungrateful wolf. Surely, you can't be so heartless. As I was locked in the house, it wasn't until half a month later that the family started arranging blind dates for me. But whether it was because of Stephen's influence or our family's overwhelming debts, finding a suitable son-in-law wasn't easy. Luckily, at this time, I needed to return to New York to prepare for my graduation thesis in defense. With this prestigious degree by my side, it could provide me with golden opportunities. My family still attached great importance to this, so my parents accompanied me back to New York. News of Stephen's scandalous affairs was all over the place. I heard he was currently showering a third-tier female celebrity with jewelry, cars, and villas. Upon learning this, my parents scolded me several times, even getting physical one time. Seeing the finger imprints on my face, Bella was trembling with anger. Shirley cut ties with them. Such parents are worse than animals. 20 million? Bella, even if they killed me inch by inch and sold me, they wouldn't fetch 20 million. I shook my head helplessly, feeling a sense of desolation. Shirley, you are in a really tough and pitiful situation. What are you going to do? I laughed at myself. Deep down, I had a pessimistic premonition that this massive abyss might be something I could never climb out of in this lifetime. Suddenly, Bella tugged at my sleeve and looked pale-faced at something behind me. "The male model you were with that night is here." I instinctively turned around and locked eyes with Richard. In an instant, I felt a chill run down my spine, and my whole back was drenched in sweat. Without thinking further, my body reacted faster than my mind. I stood up abruptly, grabbed Bella, and started running. But I didn't notice the chair in front of me, and my dress got caught in the armrest, almost causing me to stumble embarrassingly. However, Richard was quicker than me. He reached out, grabbed my arm, and steadied me. "Shirley, why are you running?"
Bella gaped in shock.
"Shirley, how does he even know your name?" Richard raised his gaze, giving Bella a disinterested look, and she immediately fell silent. Fearful that Richard might take his anger out on Bella, I steadied my nerves and spoke. "Bella, go back first and I'll contact you later." Bella wanted to say something but stared at Richard's demeanor and inexplicably shrank back. "Shirley, hurry back to school. Don't stay out too late," she said before leaving. Once Bella was gone, I looked at Richard. "Richard, let's talk. I'm sorry about that evening. I was drunk and that's why I mistook you for." I found it hard to say. After all, the esteemed Prince Charming of the Smiths was mistaken by me as a male model. It was a massive humiliation, and the fact that Richard didn't send anyone after me the next day was already considered lucky. But Richard suddenly reached out and held my chin, his eyes showing traces of anger. "Shirley, what happened to your face?" I was taken aback and remembered the slap mark on my face. The sense of grievance within me overflowed silently. It was all from my family. It had nothing to do with Richard. "It's nothing." I wanted to push Richard's hand away, but he wouldn't let go. "Who hit you, Shirley? Tell me." My eyes reddened and I said, "It was my family. It's none of your concern. Please don't worry about it. They forced you to reconcile with Stephen, and now they're forcing you to marry, aren't they?" I froze. "How did you know?" In shock, I suddenly remembered the two suspicious men in Los Angeles. "Are you having me followed?" I thought that after that day, Richard's people had left Los Angeles. It turned out that everything about me was under Richard's scrutiny. "Shirley, I never had anyone follow you. I was just..." I cut off his words. A man like Richard was someone I couldn't afford to provoke, so I didn't want to have any dealings with him anymore. Richard's hand slowly loosened, and the anger in his eyes was replaced by a melancholic mood. "So what do you want to say?" "I want to say I'm sorry. I really am sorry for that incident, so can we just not mention it anymore?" "Not mention it? What do you mean by that?" "Just pretend like nothing ever happened, okay?" I looked at Richard with red eyes. Dealing with all the messy stuff at home had drained me, and I really didn't have the energy to deal with Richard anymore. Richard didn't say anything, but his expression was grim. I gritted my teeth and spoke again. "If you want to retaliate against me, then go ahead. I accept it." "Retaliate against you?" Richard seemed to chuckle in exasperation, but after the chuckle, a hint of loneliness flickered in his eyes. "Shirley, do you really want to distance yourself from me?" I slowly nodded. I just hoped he would let me go. He didn't say anything further, just raised his hand again. I thought he was going to hit me, so I instinctively turned my face away. But his fingers lightly landed on the mark on my cheek. "Shirley, you're still the same as before. Nothing has changed. You look timid and weak, yet rebellious and brave." I looked at him in surprise. "Richard." Richard chuckled self-deprecatingly. "I must be crazy, Shirley. Only a fool would continue to be so infatuated with her, knowing she was engaged, knowing she had a suitor, yet unable to let go. Only a fool would entertain thoughts of marrying her after that night. But she never liked him from the start, never even noticed him. She didn't even remember interacting with him. But he couldn't help but worry about her, feel pain for her. Seeing the wounds on her face made him almost want to kill someone. But she didn't need it. Richard's hand slipped from my face, retreating a step back. He gave me one last look. "Shirley, you better pray that you'll have a good life in the future." I didn't quite understand the meaning of Richard's words, but he didn't finish his sentence. Richard averted his gaze, turned, and left without looking back. If Shirley lived well, he might slowly forget about her. But if she didn't fare well, if she was bullied, His heart would inevitably still think of her. But for him, this was a form of self-inflicted anguish. His longing and worry for Shirley, this foolish woman, was unnecessary. On the way back to school, I received a series of messages from Bella. "Hey Shirley, a male model? How can he have such a strong presence? I get scared just by him looking at me. What did he want from you? Did he want to continue or blackmail you? But Shirley, he looked really handsome when he rescued you just now." I looked at the messages, feeling both amused and exasperated. But my ties with Richard had been completely severed, so I replied to Bella with just one sentence. "It's all settled now. Let's not talk about this anymore, darling. It's over, but it's really a pity." I looked at the screen of my phone. For some reason, I thought of Richard's figure as he left. The Prince Charming who stood aloof had moments of desolation too. Time passed quickly. At another charity banquet in New York, my parents somehow managed to get an invitation. They had high hopes of promoting me there. They even spent a fortune to buy me a designer dress. However, the banquet had barely begun when the waiters served fresh sashimi, and I couldn't stand the fishy smell. I promptly vomited on the spot. The host, fearing that there was an issue with the food or drinks, immediately called an ambulance to take me to the hospital. But no one expected that I wasn't vomiting due to eating contaminated food. I was actually pregnant. The fetus was almost 7 weeks old. I never imagined I would end up in such a situation. Looking back now, the bleeding from before was probably just minor bleeding in the early stages of pregnancy, but I mistook it for my period. This child was Richard's. I couldn't bear to think about what his family would do if they found out I was carrying Richard's child. They would shamelessly attack and try to extract a piece of flesh from Richard. "Shirley, whose child is this?" I chuckled lightly. I had a breakup with Stephen before feeling upset. I went out for drinks, got drunk, and didn't even know who that person was. My dad was furious and slapped me twice. "Shirley, you've truly disgraced me. This child must be aborted immediately, and this incident must not be made public. If people find out you got pregnant out of wedlock and had an abortion, no man will pay a good price to marry you." Tears fell as I laughed. "If you're ashamed of me, then just sever the father-daughter relationship. Have I brought you up in vain for 20 years? I suggest you bury that thought and get the surgery done quickly, get your diploma, and go back to Los Angeles." I didn't respond, but I resolved in my heart that this time, no matter what, I had to find a way to escape from this family. I was transferred to a private hospital in New York overnight. The surgery was scheduled to begin at 8 p.m. Choosing a private hospital ensured privacy. However, no one expected that just as I was being pushed into the operating room, dozens of luxury cars would suddenly drive into the hospital. At the forefront was a Hummer with dual plates. Numerous black-clad bodyguards rushed out of the cars and surrounded the building where I was. With a grave expression, Richard brandished a gun and kicked open the slightly ajar door of the operating room. The doctor who was about to administer the anesthesia was so scared he dropped the needle. I sat up in shock, but Richard had already walked to the bedside with a cold expression and directly lifted me up. No one dared to stop him. Outside the door stood 2 rows of bodyguards holding guns. My parents were so scared their legs went weak, and they couldn't even stand. Seeing Richard carrying me out, my dad finally managed to stand up, about to speak. But as Richard lifted his gaze, my dad fell silent and shrank into the corner of the wall. "Did you two force her to get rid of the child?" My dad refused to speak and nudged my mom to answer. "Yes, no, we were just thinking of Shirley's well-being. After all, she is young. It wouldn't sound good to say she got pregnant out of wedlock." Yes, a girl's reputation is everything." Richard looked down at me, and I was still stuck in the sudden turn of events, unable to come to my senses. Richard's tone was lax, his voice soft, but to anyone's ears it sent shivers down their spine. "You, sir, Shirley is our daughter. How could we mistreat her?" "Mistreatment or not, I know very well." Richard carried me, taking a step forward. My parents were so scared they huddled together, backs against the wall with no room to retreat. They were truly frightened by the situation. After all, Richard's bodyguards were armed, and everyone seemed poised, not like they were just bluffing. "We won't dare anymore. We truly won't anymore. Shirley will have no connection with you in the future. She will be my wife, the Smith's lady, the future mistress." My dad suddenly widened his eyes. In that moment, I saw in his eyes shock, disbelief, ecstasy, and ultimately, it all turned into despair. They had wanted me to climb the social ladder, sell me for a good sum to save them. But in the end, when their dream came true, they had no connection with it at all. During the car ride, perhaps due to pregnancy-induced drowsiness or perhaps due to the exhausting events of the day, I fell asleep in Richard's arms. It wasn't until the car stopped that I wearily opened my eyes. Outside the car window was a brightly lit place. A massive mansion perched on a hill like a palace. Where is this? Our home? Richard lowered his head and gently kissed my forehead. Are you still tired? Few are, you can go back to sleep. I had intended to reply, but I just nodded and closed my eyes, falling asleep again. Richard sighed, picked me up and got out of the car. He carried me into the main building and up to the bedroom on the second floor. I slept deeply, completely unaware of my surroundings. Richard stayed in the room for a while before heading downstairs. The butler had gathered all the house staff, bodyguards, and other employees in the house. Richard glanced at everyone before speaking seriously. She is my future wife, the future mistress of the Smiths. Everyone was taken aback by his words, but they all obediently held their breath and listened to Richard speak. Treat her the way you treat me. If she wakes up, inform me immediately. After he finished speaking, Richard extended his hand for his coat and walked out, saying, "Get the car ready. I'm going to see grandfather now." That night, I slept deeply, as if I had never experienced such a comfortable sleep in my 20 years of life. When I woke up, it was almost 9 o'clock. This was a completely unfamiliar environment. Strangely, I didn't feel any resistance or discomfort. After getting up and freshening up, I randomly picked a new dress from the wardrobe and went downstairs. I found Richard sitting downstairs. When he saw me coming down, he didn't get up but continued sitting there. "Go eat something. Have you eaten?" "Yes, I have," he replied, then diverted his gaze back to the newspaper. I couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't look very well. He seemed worn out, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Even though he had a strong constitution, he couldn't bear the ordeal he went through last night. He had received a punishment from his grandfather, kneeling downstairs all night until 6 in the morning. Despite his sturdy physique, the ordeal had taken its toll on him. Both his legs were almost useless. Yet even if he had to lose both legs, he would willingly do so. Although he was used to being arrogant since childhood, for the first time he felt uncertain about the outcome. He couldn't help but glance towards the restaurant. Shirley was sitting there, eating her breakfast with a gentle demeanor. Her profile looked incredibly obedient. Richard's heart softened almost to the point of melting. It was this kind of girl who stole his heart yet refused to be with him. But he had no way to force her. Now that she was carrying his child, his heart was filled with a mix of emotions: bitterness, tenderness, and longing. He wished he could just marry Shirley right away. But he restrained himself. He didn't want to scare her off again, like that night when she disappeared without a trace. Richard couldn't bear to watch the person he loved walk away from him, knowing he couldn't. Richard took me back to the Smiths' mansion to meet his grandfather. The formidable figure I had heard about turned out to be a kind and gentle old man in my eyes. It was only after meeting his grandfather that I learned Richard had knelt all night because of me. He had always been proud and never bowed down until that moment. His grandfather sighed. I knew that if I didn't agree, he would have argued with me until the end, damaging our relationship. So I decided to give in. I understand now why he likes you. However, I couldn't fathom why Richard and I had crossed paths due to a mistake that night. I didn't believe for a second that he fell in love with me because of that one night. But regardless, my perception of Richard had undergone a massive transformation. Thinking back to that morning when Richard sat without getting up, I had inwardly commented on his prince-like demeanor. Now I realized it was probably because his legs were hurting too much for him to stand up. It had been 2 or 3 days since then, and Richard still felt uncomfortable walking at times. Coming out of his grandfather's study, I couldn't help but gently pull Richard's sleeve. "Are your legs still hurting?" Richard looked down at my hand holding his sleeve, and after a while he spoke. "It's much better, but it still hurts to walk. Have you applied the ointment?" "I keep forgetting. I didn't apply it on time." "Then I will remind you to apply it regularly from now on." Richard's lips curved slightly, and as I let go of his hand, He suddenly held onto my fingers. Okay then, you remind me every day. However, daily reminders turned into me applying the ointment for him 3 times a day. I realized he was pushing his luck. He even sweet-talked me into it and initiated a kiss. When I was 5 months pregnant, my relationship with Richard had progressed significantly. When I invited Bella to our house, she thought she was dreaming. Only when Richard went to his study did she hold my arm with sparkling eyes and say, "Shirley, you slept with the Prince of the Smiths that night. You're my friend. And you hit the jackpot by picking the prince. When will I ever have such luck? Tell me, is he extraordinary in bed? 7 times in one night." I laughed at her comment and teased her. "Don't choke yourself. I thought you were my best friend. But you kept this from me for so long." I was both amused and touched, and I hugged her gently. "Bella, since I came to New York, you've been my only friend. And you'll always be my best and most cherished friend. No matter what I was before or what I become, this will never change." "You're so annoying," Bella suddenly said, being so sentimental. "It makes me want to cry too." As tears fell, Bella joined in. Richard, hearing the commotion, came down and was startled to see us crying. Worried, he asked if something was wrong. After reassuring him that everything was okay, he held me close. Richard, holding our daughter, stood there not looking pleased. I smiled reassuringly, squeezing his hand to comfort him.
Infine, Richard.
"Bella and I were just having a joyful moment." "Are you sure? Did he upset you?" We hadn't yet determined the baby's gender, but Richard believed it was a boy because of my pregnancy symptoms. He didn't fancy the idea of having a son, and had always expressed his desire for a daughter who looked just like me. "You're behaving well today." I cast a playful glance at Richard as he kept saying our baby was a naughty boy, which wasn't a term of endearment. I was about to snap back when Bella abruptly left, exclaiming how smitten we were with each other. Looking at Bella running off, I couldn't help but laugh. It felt like I had suddenly gained the best friendship and love overnight. Hold off on her visits. After putting our daughter in the stroller, Richard hugged me tightly, jokingly saying, "Whenever she's here, you only pay attention to her and ignore me. You can't be biased." "Have I been biased? Then kiss me, Shirley. Kiss me seriously, don't just pretend." Faced with the man in front of me, I gently cupped his handsome face and looked into his obsidian eyes. Deep within those dark orbs, I saw only myself. Feeling a surge of sweetness, I leaned in and kissed him. Richard's hand threaded through my hair, tightening as the kiss deepened. I gave birth to a daughter who had my eyes and mouth but features resembling Richard's. When she turned 1 month old, we had a wedding ceremony in the Maldives. Just before the wedding began, I unexpectedly received a call from Stephen. Richard, slightly jealous, stood by holding our daughter, watching me closely. I smiled and reassured him, gripping his hand. I picked up the phone. "Stephen, what's up? Where are you? I miss you. Can I come to see you?" Stephen's voice sounded melancholic. I held Richard's hand tighter, preventing him from pulling away. After a few attempts, he let me hold his hand. I hadn't expected any of this, yet a distant memory sprung up. I remember that Bella and I analyzed the situation for a long time. In the end, we concluded that this man was really scary and we should stay away from him. Pursuing a girl like that, one would think he was trying to kidnap her. And if you fall in love with a man like that, who knows? If you try to break up in the future, you might end up chopped into pieces and thrown into the sea. Bella said he had tattoos on his wrist. He must be involved in the criminal underworld. When I first arrived in New York, still young, I was naturally scared and ran away. When I was younger, I was used to judging people by their appearance, but now I understand. Those who seem genteel and refined are the most detestable, like Stephen. As for Richard, I couldn't help but stand on my tiptoes to kiss him. He is the most precious treasure I have ever found in my life. "Shirley, will you marry me?" I nodded vigorously. "Richard, I am very happy. I will do my best to make you happy for the rest of your life. I won't let anyone bully you again, Shirley." Richard rarely spoke so seriously. I almost cried. "Don't tease me. My makeup will be ruined if I cry." I gently wiped the tears from my eyelashes.
Okay, Shirley, no crying.
"Today, Shirley, you are going to be the most beautiful bride." But I haven't fully recovered. My waist is still a bit thick. Originally, I didn't want to have a wedding just 1 month after giving birth, But Richard couldn't wait any longer. It doesn't matter. We can have several more weddings after we return home. Have a wedding in each place. You're crazy, Richard. I just want the whole world to know that I've married the girl I like. Richard hugged me again and whispered softly in my ear. Surely, you have no idea how happy I am at this moment.